When you look at me, do you see an average human being? Most of you would say yes. Now, maybe a little bit bigger, I may be a little bit taller than most people, but for the most part, you look at me and you see an average human being. The simple fact is that's just not true. By the time I was 18, my body was worth more than $250,000. This is possible because of a place called Scottish Rite Hospital in downtown Texas. And this is what they did to me in patient care, this is what they did to me in research, this is nurses' hours, this is doctors' hours, this is everything. It came together to create the person that you see in front of you. Now, the reason that this is so important is I didn't spend a dime, not one penny. Scottish Rite covered all of it. Now, this hospital is not the kind of hospital that does this for your everyday fracture. This is kind of the worst case scenarios. This is who they see. They see the bad guys, the people who had some problems. Now, the reason that this is so important is I believe there should be a Scottish Rite in every single major city in the entire world because of what they do. It's that important. Now, I'm not going to tell you that this Scottish Rite is better than St. Jude's or that it's better than any other hospital in the world for that matter. The chart that's going to kind of talk about, this is a chart that's going to kind of talk about how, what Scottish Rite does for their patients. They fix your hand, they fix your foot, they fix your hips, they fix your spine, they fix pretty much anything orthopedically that could be wrong with you, they fix it. But like I said before, they don't just fix your average everyday fracture, they fix the worst of the worst. You gotta have a big problem in order to go see Scottish Rite. Now, this is a chart from last year. This is kind of just percentages letting you know what they kind of do as a general rule. Now, this is 25,000 people that they treated just last year. It's very, very important. And that the doctors and the physicians know what they're doing, they know how to fix these things, they know all of this. This is required. Now, the doctors and physicians who perform these surgeries and fix these disorders, they are the best in the world. They're not halfway decent doctors, they are the best of the best. They do research on everything they do, and that research is shared with everybody in the entire world. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and the disorder that I had to go through as a kid. When I was 13 years old, I was diagnosed with slipped capital femoral epiphysis, or as the doctors like to call it, SCFE. This is a disorder where your hip kind of just falls out of place. It's a growth defect, and I grew really tall over the summer. About 3-4 month period, I grew about 7 inches. And that caused my hips to slip out of place. Now, the reason that for most people, it's just a penny. You know, it's just normal. They screw your hips back into place and you grow normal and everything's fine. My condition unfortunately started 2.5 years before it was diagnosed. And because of that, everything was kind of damaged. The cartilage was damaged, the ligaments were damaged. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Now, because of what was wrong with me, I had to have several surgeries. I had 7 surgeries before I turned 18. The first one was that normal pinning. They still had to do that because even though my case was severe, they had to do it. And they did it the day that it was diagnosed. They did not mess around. And for most people, when you have an emergency surgery, Scottish Rite doesn't do emergency surgeries. They outpatient those to children's. But because my case was so severe, they did my surgery that day. And after that, I had to have 2 osteotomies, which is where they cut the bone and they rotate the hip, and then they put a plate in and they set it back kind of where it's supposed to be. Because my case was so severe, the cartilage in my hips weren't allowing me to have the movement that was necessary. So they had to then completely reconstruct my hip. The cartilage, the ligaments, everything had to be reconstructed. Now, enough about me. I'm going to talk about the research and the movement lab. The picture you see now is kind of a general movement lab. This is from Scottish Rite. This picture was taken from Scottish Rite, but it's kind of a general what you see when you go into the movement lab. The reason that it's so important to me is I've been a part of this research program. They took where I was at the beginning and they continued it until where I was at the end, and they found out exactly how much better my movement was, how much better everything worked. My gait, my movement, everything. I used to walk kind of like a penguin. Now I kind of walk straight and normal. And because of this movement lab, they can see exactly how much different it is. Hopefully you think the way I do now. Having said that, I would really prefer you didn't just take my word for it. I would prefer you go out and do your own research, find out as much as you can about Scottish Rite and what they do for their patients. It's very important that we get the word out. That's the most important thing that I can convey to you throughout this entire speech. I want you to get the word out. If you just tell one person and you tell that person to tell someone else, eventually everyone in the entire world will know what Scottish Rite is, and we'll never have to tell another patient that there's nothing else that we can do. And we may even at some point never have to see another person in a wheelchair again.